A new legal setback in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. A federal judge in Washington blocking President Trump's asylum ban yesterday, ruling President Trump exceeded his authority with this order that declared illegal immigration a national emergency in order to forego existing legal processes. Now, the White House is calling the ruling an attack on our Constitution, laws, and national sovereignty, and filed an appeal just last hour or an hour later. Let's bring in immigration lawyer Alan Orr. He's also past president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Alan, help us understand what this ruling means now for people seeking asylum.
So right now, it means nothing because it's sort of frozen for 14 days, which allowed for this appeal to happen. And then we'll see what happens. There's a shadow docket to make a decision or to move forward. It really didn't change anything, but it's been 6 months since the asylum basically shut down. What the order says is the exact opposite of what the White House responded. The judge found that there was no power in the Constitution or in current immigration laws to give the president, the executive branch, this power regardless of who was in that seat. And therefore, all immigration laws must be passed by Congress. So just like with this big bill that they're sort of pushing through, if he wants to change asylum laws, he has the Senate, he has the House, have them reform it and then sign it into law. That's the appropriate way to do it.
So this also comes as we've been seeing that uptick in arrests of migrants at immigration courts, even people who, come in through a port of entry. They made an appointment maybe on the app to present their asylum claim. They're following the rules. They're attending their immigration hearings only to see then their cases immediately dismissed, and then they're detained by ICE. We're talking mothers, fathers, entire families with young children. Would this ruling have any impact on those cases and that tactic?
It doesn't sort of freeze that tactic, but that tactic is under review. And just understand that this is not helping the United States in any way for having law-abiding people who are following the rules. It doesn't deter people when they follow the rules to then be put in removal proceedings, and it's extremely costly, right? This is not about policy. This is about big business for private prisons, and that's what we all need to sort of wake up and see in this instance. What this does do is send the president a message about him freezing asylum. But right now, we've already have the military at the border, and the border numbers are down. So this invasion scenario that the story he's telling doesn't exist anymore. So we should move away from those sort of stories. And we also should start looking at the cost. When you have 6 people arresting one person who's working at a restaurant, that does not cost benefit the United States at all. And it is not the worst of the worst going to any of these places.
Meanwhile, we're learning some new details about alleged abuse Kilmar Abrego Garcia faced while he was detained in CCOT, that notorious prison in El Salvador. A new court filing from a federal lawsuit filed by his wife against the Trump administration alleges he was kicked and hit in the head within minutes of arriving there. They say he and other detainees were forced to kneel for 9 hours nightly and were struck if they fell from exhaustion. They were made to soil themselves. This is just one man's apparent story. The government paid El Salvador millions to detain more than 200 migrants. Do you think these new alleged details will have an impact on this suit? And could it bolster anyone else's attempt to be released from that prison?
Absolutely. So this is the evidence that we needed, and this is part of the reason why they didn't want him to be returned to the United States, because he's a speaking head of the actualities that happened in the prison. And of course, you're saying it is his account, but we've all seen the pictures and we've all sort of seen the story that was presented even by the Homeland Security Secretary going there and taking pictures in front of these facilities that are not safe. And we know even within our own country this year, we've already had 13 deaths in U.S. detention facilities, and 5 of them being in Florida. And that has never happened before, to have that many deaths at these type of detention centers that are overcrowded. So it's going to send a very strong message to judges to be able to say, yeah, the United States does not return people to torture. And we also have rules in this country where we don't put people in unhumanized positions such as those that are in that CCOT prison.
In another development this morning, Customs and Border Protection vehicles were seen entering that makeshift immigration facility in Florida Everglades that has been dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. The first detainees were expected to arrive last night, so it appears to be happening. Our South Florida affiliate's already reporting, though, that there was flooding inside the facility. What rights do these detainees have?
They have the same, so there's a Fifth Amendment right to almost everybody within this country with sort of a habitable conditions. But beyond sort of those rights, why can't we just amaze at what this country is able to do in 7 to 9 days to actually hurt people, right? They could have also made some help some unhoused people in the United States, help some of the vets that they could claim about. They sort of threw this up in 7 to 9 days, ran up a budget that is now going to be covered and refunded from the taxpayer dollars in this big bill back to Florida. So the habitable conditions are already a problem. The detention centers are a problem, and there are already tons of cases being sued against them. One about using the property, one about the money that's being used for the property, and also the conditions that would be under examination. But what kind of message does it send when the only way we think we're deterring immigration is to treat people less than human? That doesn't send a strong message about the United States at all.
Alan Orr, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate your insights and your perspective.